r/AskReddit. As far as you're concerned, what is society's elephant in the room? Huh? Turns out there are lots of stuffing elephants. Except for little elephants. If only we could get the pandas to start stuffing too. We don't talk about the stuffing elephants. The fact that all of our products are made by people in third world countries under various unethical circumstances. Everyone wants to get upset, but no one wants to give up their iPhone. As I post this comment on an iPhone, you should read Ursula K. Le Guin's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. It is a short story that heart-wrenchingly reveals this oversight. This is actually only now being studied, and obviously it's a hotbed of controversy. In a laboratory we can create class difference randomly, but the consistent result is those who are given a better start believe they were the captains of their own destiny and never attribute their success to their head start. Essentially, first world countries are born on third base and love to brag about how much smarter, harder working they are compared to the people at bat. A lot of people are having mental issues, and the dark question we're left with is, did previous generations have this and we're just undiagnosed by an uncaring world? Or have we been uniquely mentally broken as a generation? To give an example, before my nan got sectioned because of her vascular dementia, I remember speaking to my mother about what was happening. I remember saying that if this was in old times, they would have considered her insane and sent her to a mental asylum. She passed a few years back, and I think it may be one of the worst things we ever witnessed in real life. At least in our modern society we have much more understanding and treat these people with dignity, worded loosely because some of the care homes she went to want closing down and tried in a court of law. Sorry for rambling on, but people with Alzheimer's and dementia must have had horrible deaths in old times. No doubt it existed back then too. I regret that I have but one upvote to give for this comment. The really odd part is that now no one wants to talk about their problems because they know everyone else has them and don't want to add to the burden or think their issues aren't as bad, so they have no right to complain. It's next level confusing. Social media is a fucking powerful weapon that's pretty freely used to significant effect. I don't think it was designed that way per se, but it's evolved far quicker than laws around its use has, and it's an under-policed threat, even to people that consider themselves immune to most social media. This is a big one. I would also throw in the algorithm. Everyone knows about it, nobody really acknowledges, but we all know that curates what we see online as far as recommendations and ads go. It's fascinating and creepy how, when using someone else's computer phone to see what kind of ads they get, what YouTube videos they get recommended, what TikToks pop up on their feed, or what Snapchat Discover thinks they'll like. It is a profile of you of what it thinks you like. And now we all have to be careful about what we search on Google, cause it might give the algorithm a bad idea and start suggesting weird things that aren't a reflection of you. Which is dystopian F. I can't look up anything about my favorite anime outside of incognito, because otherwise it starts giving me really creepy anime video game ads that I 0% interest in for like the next 2 weeks. I don't want to sound like a boomer, but I seriously think internet general media addiction is being overlooked. I know everyone talks about it, but I don't think anyone ever thinks of their specific media habits as problematic. I went through a period of depression and anxiety that in retrospect was almost entirely caused by the fact that I would come home and immediately jump on social media, YouTube, whatever, and veg out for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours every day, more on weekends. I felt entertained because I was getting dopamine hits, but in reality I felt bored and listless anytime I wasn't on the computer. That alcohol consumption is really far more dangerous than it's portrayed. No joke, alcohol is a hard drug, and I'll take that sentence to my grave. I'm not all indie, but people need to change their perception and start minding science more than social norms. I get treated like a pariah when I say I don't drink. Everyone gets annoyed and angry with me like I'm doing it because I think I'm better than they are or holier than thou. They take it so personally that I've lost friends over it. It's really disheartening. It tells me a lot about how culturally ingrained it is and how much people define their social lives by it, that even suggesting otherwise is an insult to them personally. This reply is going to get buried, but I learned this the hard way. I didn't think my drinking habits were a problem. I'd have a couple glasses of wine at night to wind down while I watched Netflix or played video games. Sometimes I'd have a bit more. Other times maybe just one glass. If I went out with friends I'd have maybe 3 or 4 drinks. In an effort to save some money I decided to stop, and after a couple days I actually had withdrawal symptoms. Like, scary ones, shaking, extreme anxiety, extreme insomnia, intrusive thoughts. It was fucking awful. I did a little research into it, and apparently withdrawal is very common for anyone considered a heavy drinker, which, if you're a woman like me, is just 8 drinks or more per week, 15 or more for men. That probably doesn't seem like all that much to your average person. I mean, 8 drinks a week is your nightly glass of wine with dinner, and 1 extra on the weekends. Also, once I stopped, my skin looks insanely good, I sleep better, and I have more energy. Red wine is good for you, my ass. I don't think I'll ever go back to it. The opioid crisis, and just addiction in general. Locking drug addicts in jail with a bunch of other drug addicts obviously isn't helping to do anything except make addicts more creative. Absolutely agree. Even take the example of Matthew Perry's appearance in the recent Friends reunion. The man looked like the walking embodiment of the US opioid crisis. He had clearly lost some teeth, and maybe experienced some bone loss. Upper lip, you could see the way it moved differently, which is really common with opioid addiction because you don't feel the tooth pain until way too late. I think I heard he was prescribed opioids for a skiing accident and went downhill from there. If it affects someone so wealthy and high profile like that, yet is still unspoken about publicly, or even looked down on like it's a character flaw rather than a medical problem, then it's the elephant in the room. Addiction should always be treated as a medical issue rather than a law issue. You don't want democracy. You want a dictator you agree with. The dictator I agree with is me. The more political discourse I see, the more blatant this gets. In politics, Aristotle places democracy lower than several other forms of government. He considers aristocracy, defined as rule of the best, to be better. He considers monarchy to be the ideal form, specifically in the case where the monarch is most concerned with his/her subjects' well-being, rather than him herself. There are bad forms of each as well, oligarchy and monarchy. I tend to agree, but only in a vacuum. How can we ever know with full certainty that anyone in these positions will put the interests of others first? Absolutely. The non-existing focus on improving the process of education. As a teacher, I completely agree. What I've seen in my classroom over the years is depressing AF. Watching a 7th grader stumble through Tug the Bug made my heart hurt. Thank you. Microplastics. Yes. The fact that so-called biodegradable plastics are no better than regular plastic. Plastic is plastic. It breaks down into smaller plastic. Why does no one talk about it? It's all about that sweet profit. I'm biased because this is my soapbox, but babies and young children being in media. I can't imagine any good parent who would want their baby to become a Hollywood star and make them start working from the time they can walk. It would be a complete overhaul of how we make and consume media. Child actors are child laborers. Big yikes. I hate opening Instagram and seeing little tiny toddlers all dolled up, photoshopped, and thrown out there for the world to see. Dressing them like they're adults, making them dance. All for views. I've said this to people before and they looked at me like I'm crazy, but I suspect in 50 years we will look back on kids in media the way we now look back at animals in circuses, and media, i.e.'s abuse of a creature who doesn't have the ability to advocate for themselves. I hope that in the future we just replace child actors with good the treatment of people with disabilities in social settings. Whether this is in an educational environment, a work environment, or just a general social environment, I always have felt other or have been socially treated differently as people are afraid to say things or seem biased. Because this comment has gained some traction, I'd like to share a video of my favorite blind comedian and folk singer from the band The Young Uns, David Eagle at Hot Water Comedy Club. Ugh, this is me. I'm not like avoidant, but I assume it's obvious I'm walking on tiptoes, unsure of my actions and words. And honestly, I think most folks are coming from a good place. They don't want to offend or unintentionally hurt you. But you're right, that completely forces you into the other role. And it's not okay. I think a lot of it is ignorance and lack of understanding. I bet if we had more representation of differently able people in the media, you'd begin to see a marked difference. A lot of parents expect their kids to be little carbon copies of themselves and follow out the dreams that they had, and respecting that your kids need space and aren't little science experiments like, oh, what would have happened if I pursued that job instead? For some reason a lot of parents have the mindset that your kids are not to be recognized as a person with a mind, and a lot more could be said. Childism should be recognized as a thing. There are a lot of adults that see children as possessions and nothing more. I guess they don't remember what it was like to be a kid. We created a political system that protects politicians from all blame without really empowering the masses. Also, How easy is it to paralyze countries simply using basic rules of democracy against democracy itself? There have been very few truly mass-governed systems throughout history, though. While I agree with your point, it's incredible what we've been able to accomplish in this regard, only a few generations removed from slavery, kings, outright authoritarianism, etc. Plenty of work still to do. Mental health. It's being talked about more nowadays, thankfully. The fact that the elite ruling class considers all of the poverty class to be the same, but loves to create strife between them to distract from the greater issues at hand. The American appetite for debt. Rather than enriching, the debt levels most people carry represent a lot of money thrown at things that really do not make us happy or make the future better. I've often had the thought that credit cards in America are just an economic buffer to postpone economic crashes and keep people from rioting. Because think about it, if you went to work a minimum wage job and came back with not enough food to eat, your well-being would be directly on the line and people would start demanding higher wages and rioting like the French. But instead, they're told you're just lazy, get a credit card and pay it off like a good consumer. So people end up charging things that really ought to be standard life expenses. When all this debt piles up and the entire economy goes tits up, the economists all come out in droves to explain it away as some natural occurrence, like a hurricane or a tornado, completely glossing over the fact that these economic crashes keep happening because the capitalistic economy can't sustain itself when the average person can't afford to buy the goods being produced. When the average citizen must resort to debt to keep the economy strong, your economy is bad, and you should feel bad. ITT, issues that are commonly discussed and aren't as clear-cut as the poster thinks, but not acted on, and also very US-centric. Resources, how we distribute them, how we waste them, how we dispose of them. The fact that society is built on the perpetual threat of poverty and death if you don't work. At this point in our evolution, it is absolutely reprehensible. I would say the obvious oligarch class that rules over most, but we just pretend like we're better because democracy. Society is slowly slipping towards techno-feudalism, where big tech and big corporations essentially run the country through lobbying and people go to them for all their needs, and I don't think there's much that can be done to stop that slide unless there is big antitrust reform. I was thinking this exact thing. The rich are definitely pulling enough political and media strings to suit themselves. If they can keep the poor and middle class arguing amongst themselves, then they can continue to churn out billionaires and increase their riches. Being able to turn people against each other and in most cases fight against things that would favor them is a masterful trick. That's the elephant for sure. They invest billions to make sure the peasants fight each other, rather than killing their owners in the streets in Minecraft. The homeless epidemic. It's there, you see the people with signs on street corners and everyone wants to play the side of assuming they're drug addicts or whatever to keep the notion that their morals are intact. I read a story from a city near where I live that stated they were building tiny houses for homeless people. There were so many comments complaining about how all the drug addicts would be coming to town now, as if homeless people couldn't possibly already be in the city. It really broke my heart that so many people thought this was a bad thing. That the default human behavior is to want a selfish, comfortable and fairly predictable life. That's why people tolerate dictators, buy from Amazon, accept lower privacy rights, all in the name of stability and efficiency. Contrary to what a lot of social movements will have you believe, the main driving force for people isn't being nice to each other but securing a better situation for themselves. I've always lived by the if my neighbors do better I do better lifestyle. I'm selfishly helping the people in my life to not only feel better about myself but to improve my life as well. Sorry, this ended up being a long reply, but I think it will be helpful to many people. Selfishness is necessary for survival, but there are, generally speaking, two different types. Getting something for yourself no matter what it takes, even if you have to lie, cheat, or steal to get it. Other people's well-being doesn't matter as long as you get what you want. Making sure you are taking care of all of your needs so you can feel good, be healthy, and maintain a good life for yourself. In this way you make sure you feel good and have a healthy amount of mental and physical strength and energy. This then allows you to be at your best and, therefore, give the greatest help to others. You will have enough energy and clarity of mind to help lift others up and be a strength for someone else who is going through a temporary difficulty. I learned that the definition of the word hero is strength for two. Though it is true that many people are only nice to others because they expect something in return, I like to believe that most people are nice to others simply for the fact that being authentically nice to others feels good. That's a reward in itself. Think back to when you were a young child. Or, consider times when you've felt truly relaxed and happy while interacting with another person in a friendly way. Do you remember the happiness you felt with sharing a toy or cooperating with someone else to play a game? Having a mutually satisfying conversation. Or, what about how good it feels to pet an animal? Both you and the animal feel good at the same time. Instant karma. Both types of selfishness exist at the same time. But it isn't so simple as having some people who are selfish to get something while other people are selfish to be a better help to others. Both types of selfishness exist in each person. Which type a person uses most of the time and in which situations depends on what that person believes about themselves, other people, the world, and what the meaning of life is. This leads to how people treat each other. Each individual interaction feeds into defining the whole of the society and culture you live in. Trends in mistreating certain types of people become widespread, and we all allow it to happen. It's everyone's fault, even mine. If you believe that people are only nice to you because they want something from you, then you will be rude and condescending toward them, or you will fake being thankful and make plans to manipulate them so you get something from them too. In this scenario, you're behaving no better than the other person. Two peas in a pod. If you believe that it's because it feels good to be nice, then you will also be nice toward them. Both of you will feel good. Simply wonderful for both of you. If the other person is just trying to get something from you and you believe that they are simply being nice, then they will learn the true reward for kindness is the happiness that comes from it when they don't get anything else in return. Sure, they'll be insulted or angry at first, but someday, hopefully, they will see the beauty of the joy that comes from just being kind. Here, you've planned to do seed for them. We do tend to just go along with things that are convenient and give us a sense of comfort. That's because in order to be a healthy human, we need a sense of equilibrium. A foundation of safety and stability, even if it isn't really healthy. You train your mind and body to believe it needs certain things to be safe and free to function without fear. An alcoholic needs to start their day with a couple of drinks to get a buzz that makes them feel steady on their feet and able to think again. This is a physiological part of the disease, or illness. After drinking heavily over a long period of time, the body depends on the substance to be able to function normally. This is why it's important for a person quitting any substance to do it with a doctor's help. If they quit cold turkey, their body will go into shock. Some people die from quitting alcohol or drugs cold turkey. Their body can't handle it. It believes that if it doesn't get it, that it will die and will stop functioning. This is the same, to a lesser degree, for a person who drinks coffee every morning and won't do anything until after they've had their second cup. The minds and bodies of both people truly won't work well until they've had the substance they've trained their body to need. I used to smoke a pack of cigarettes, 20 cigarettes, a day. Now, I smoke between 4 to 7 cigarettes a day. Whenever I stop smoking, my body reacts badly. I sleep most of the day and can only stay up for about an hour at a time before the overwhelming tiredness comes back and my eyes close. I will fall asleep sitting up. I've made it to 5 days, but then was so sick of sleeping all of the time that I started smoking again. Everything was fine after that. I'm slowly weaning my body's dependence on the cigarettes, though I hate the smell and how it makes my throat feel. This is the same for anything a person says they absolutely need to have in order to feel happy or comfortable in their own skin, such as playing a video game for a certain amount of time, reading their social media, running 3 miles, working out, drinking a glass of water before every meal. This is true for both unhealthy and healthy habits we all choose for ourselves. If you believe you need it, your mind and body believe you and it becomes true for you. As for putting up with dictators and other screwed up situations, yes, we do that sometimes. We will reason our way out of fighting against certain things to keep some sort of balance in our lives, even if we know there's something wrong about it. True. We have to consider self-preservation above all things. If we don't exist, we will never be able to do anything in the future when the right opportunity comes for us. As much as we'd like to attack what is unjust and get rid of it, we still need to get ourselves in the right mindset in order to do it right, with the least amount of self-harm or harm to others in the process. This takes time and good planning. Besides, many times, the unjust and abusive ones always end up destroying themselves in one way or another. That's the nature of those types of behavior. You always get what you give. You always attract what you are. But what if we could find a way to save them too, while making our own situation safer away from them? Just a little something to think about. Human nature is peaceful and cooperative, not violent and self-serving. Read more about this here.